let us now, and I'm going to stay sitting here, get stuck into the first of several panels. Now, this first one is called the European Economy of the Future. You can see it behind me, lean, green, and high tech. And just important heads up, this one's organized in partnership with Digital Europe's French membership organization, Numium. Okay, so the starting point, well, we're going to build on Digital Europe's recent reports, Digital Action equals Climate Action. And this was already mentioned, these 8 ideas to accelerate the twin transition in Europe. So we had a lot there about Europe, even from Ursula von der Leyen, as a manufacturing powerhouse leading the way on Industry 4.0, and has strengths in very, very specific areas, such as, transport, energy, and some world-leading technologies that are really helping to drive down emissions. But as she and as Cecilia said, there is a long way to go. So we are going to pinpoint some of those pioneering examples of Europe's industrial renaissance. And critically, we're going to explore what we need to do, because that's important to roll them out across the continent. But it's a real treat, because we're going to hear directly from the French presidency. As Cecilia mentioned, we're going to find out how it is and how it plans to support industry in the digital transformation, and of course the twin transition as a whole. So who are we discussing with? I think we've got a slide with names. There we are. Of course we do. It's been there for ages. So that means I can actually, and this is a great privilege, invite all 3 of my speakers to please come and join me. And I'm going to ask Florence Verzelen to please come here. She is Executive Vice President, Industry, Marketing and Sustainability at Dassault Systèmes. And you can actually clap, because we have real live people here. Can I also invite Mathieu? So delightful, Head of Digital Economy at the Ministry of Economy in France. You can give him a very warm round of applause. And the lovely Brehm. Come, join us, please. CEO of Factory Automation at Siemens Digital Industries. So because it's nice to have you here, I'm going to do another poll, and then you can see the results and see if you think that the audience in the room are worthy of being here and those online or not. So are we making, here's the question, are we making the most of digital technologies to tackle the climate crisis? Yes or no? So, yeah, you might all say, hang on, because it does tend to change when people wake up and have a coffee and then start to get a bit cross because it's not voting the way they want it to. But at the moment, it's a clear no. And it's not going to move, is it? No. Okay, so let us dive straight in. We've got about 35, 40 minutes. So I'm going to just come straight in with you, please. So 3 ways, let's be very clear, 3 ways in which France is leveraging the digital sector to specifically respond to environmental issues. Can you give us a little bit of a steer there? First, you can start, and then I'll come to you with Dassault. Yeah.
Up to you. Oh, all right. So I think the 3 ways that you are asking for is probably, there are 2 ways to answer. One is to look at the technological side of what we need to create a digital and sustainable society. And of course, that echoes a lot about what the President, Ursula von der Leyen, just said in the introduction, with technologies such as chips, the semiconductor industry, with the data economy, the ability to master AI technologies, the ability to have world-class connectivity as well, which obviously is a very strong aspect of being able to be the masters of our own future. Mm-hmm. But I would say there are also very transversal aspects that we need to invest more in. And if I had really my 3 ways, it would be talent. Mm-hmm. Talent is necessary, and we need to drive talent towards the sustainable goals. It would be obviously investment. Mm-hmm. There are billions of euros to drive 2 sustainable goals that are currently being discussed, and that was a significant part of the details on the CHIPS Act, but that applies to a wider set of areas. we need to go from, to quote Ursula von der Leyen's, lab to fab, and from the lab to the fab. And I think that's where we've had deficiencies. We in the digital sector, we sometimes forgot about the fabs. It was sort of, immaterial, and everything was in the cloud, and we didn't really mind about it. But when we look at the environmental impact, about sustainability, we need to have the whole value chain and build our own capacity of production as well.
So let me stick with you just for a moment, and then feel free just in a moment to respond before I grill you and pinpoint both of you. Specifically, as we said, we are looking at industry, and we're looking at some pioneers. So critically, that's my question to you. How are you? Under the French presidency, Cecilia said there is a lot of work to be done. We are counting on you. How specifically are you planning to support industry in this digital transformation? How are we getting those fabulous industrial champions?
It's a great question, because it gives me an opportunity to say that Monday and Tuesday, we are hosting a conference on building Europe's digital sovereignty, and that's precisely what you're asking about, because it's about tackling the whole ecosystem. And of course, as a presidency, we're eagerly waiting for the CHIPS Act and to move it forward with our colleagues from the Council. We are also investing and trying to advance with our colleagues all these IPCEIs, important projects of European impact that address, of course, the electronics, connectivity. We've been fostering the connectivity aspect as well in the cloud sector. So we are trying to coordinate the investment at European scale, because that's the relevant scale when we want to address these sustainability challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to come to you, Florence, if I may. And we heard there about the French digital ecosystem. And, when I was chatting to you beforehand, I said, I love all the big picture stuff, but we need examples, because that's what people want to hear. So could you perhaps complement that? Could you provide maybe a couple of examples of how the French digital ecosystem, in particular 3DS, if that's something that you would particularly want to focus on, has committed to reducing its own digital footprint? And also, not only that, leveraging those technologies to support that transformation in other sectors. Give us something that these people our good audience can grab onto.
Yeah, definitely. And really, there is two aspects in your question: is how digital tech is basically taking over the sustainability challenge for themselves, and how we empower the other sector to become more sustainable. So, tech. As per the recent report from the SHIFT project, we represent 3.5% of greenhouse gas emissions. So if we really want to twin digital transition and sustainability transition, we have to tackle this 3.5%. So this is what we are doing in France. Actually, this is the reason why Dassault Systèmes has decided to join Numéum. Numéum is a leader of tech in France. And with Numéum, we have launched a project named Planet Tech Care. And what is Planet Tech Care about? It's exactly about that, federating all the initiatives to reduce the emissions and making sure that we develop open source, open data commons, and that we then federate it at the European level. And for Dassault Systèmes, well, we've committed to become net zero by 2040. Because we think that's the only way forward. And we are going to reduce to the minimum level of emissions, and thereafter work with startups to make sure that we cap from the atmosphere the residual CO2 emissions. So that's really how tech is tackling sustainability, to go towards net zero, to walk the talk. But at the same time, digital is a very powerful tool to make other industries more sustainable. And last year, in January, I released a study with Accenture that showed that virtual twin technology, in particular, can be super efficient. Basically, with 5 use cases of virtual twin in construction, high tech, life science, transportation, and mobility, we could save the equivalent of 1 year of CO2 emission of the whole transportation industry with a virtual twin. Because if you have a virtual twin, even before producing your car, your plane, or building your bridge, you can decide to optimize everything and reduce significantly. For example, we are doing that with a company that all of you know, Bouygues. And on a Bouygues project with a virtual twin of a building, they could reduce by 40% their emission. Or another company called Amcor, they're into packaging. With a virtual twin of the product, they could reduce the weight and therefore the emission by 2. So it's just huge in terms of reduction capacity.
Thank you. And thank you also, just going back to what you mentioned when you were talking about, federating at EU level, but also talking about really promoting open source, because we are going to go into that in more depth in the second panel. So thank you. You've been quiet like a sphinx, but you are there. Now, you have the benefit of hearing what everybody else says and coming in. Now, we heard so much about sort of trends. We heard this incredible fact, what was it, from the Digital Europe president there, that COVID has accelerated digital implementation by 6 years. I think the research showed that was the quote, but there is still a lot, and has also shown up many weaknesses, not least we heard production needs, supply chains. So what in particular in terms of Industry 4.0, let's pick 3 main trends that you've seen develop since the COVID crisis?
Yeah, and it's true. It was really accelerating. And some factors came together. I think the first thing which I see is the flexibility. There is a need for increased flexibility. And we see that because you have the constraint on the supply chain. Customers' demands are changing. Suddenly the logistic chain are broken. And then how can you flexibly react in your manufacturing to the new situation? Mm-hmm. And one example in our own factory, there's a shortage on components. So what you do, you basically talk to the supplier and give me more on the one side. On the other side, you do a redesign, look for a second source, a third source. But you need to design that new component into your product. Mm. And in the past, it took us probably 4 months to do a redesign and then get it down to the line that there's an output out of the manufacturing with this new component. In the meanwhile, we are down to 2 days. So you do a redesign and it's immediately down on the line. So from R&D of the product down to the real manufacturing. And that gives us more flexibility to changing to demand. So number one, flexibility. Secondly, we talked about digitalization, digital twin. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important to very fast ramp up new aspects. So for example, we supported BioNTech or Pfizer, where they were kind of in a lab area now to a large scale manufacturing of 1 billion doses of vaccine within a year. So a large ramp up, and you can only do that with digital means. You need to simulate. You cannot test and trial and error. You need to simulate and leverage in digital twins. And those digital twins, I think, is the third factor. That's on sustainability. In the past, companies looked at sustainability. Okay, if there's a return of invest, they're going to save energy. Fine. This was maybe 5 years ago. Now they see really sustainability as a big value because their customer wants it. It's part of the company value, and they're looking for solutions. And those solutions can be, for example, the use of a green digital twin. Just as mentioned, when you do a design, you get assistance. What material can I use? Can I use recycled material? What is the impact on the product quality? You can design for recycle. And I think what excites me the most, how can we design for repair? So the cyclic economy, I think this will come more and more and more. And that only is possible with the use of digital twins, but also the European product passport, for example. Yeah.
Let me stay with you just a moment, because, you provide those very impressive examples of how you've had to speed up, be flexible. I mean, when you said it's just suddenly become 2 days, I was going to ask if any of your employees are actually still alive after making that speediness. So, and sustainability seen as a value, and there are big changes, and you're meeting that. And if we're again going back to the title of this, an industry, I'm going to sneak in that little question. Do you think industry is sufficiently recognized within the regulatory framework within this transition and the value it provides? Just a short answer there, and then I'll be coming back to you, but you're welcome also to reply, Mathieu. Let me ask you.
Yeah, I think we are kind of recognized, but I think industry is not industry. It's so specific. And electronic industry looks different than car building, that's different than pharmaceutical. And there are different use cases. I want to talk more about what are the use cases for certain verticals, rather than having a general discussion on free data flow, which is fine. I think that's a basement. But what use cases we are building out of that?
Yeah. So, and also, so perhaps more picking up, am I right, on what Cecilia was saying? I think it's one of the key points, the 8, that this sector specific, exactly what you say. It's so different. Did you want to come in there, Mathieu or Florence?
Maybe just to add on this discussion about verticals, because I think that's a key aspect of digital. Digital is not a sector. It's not a closed ecosystem. It's a transformation that affects all aspects of our lives, all aspects of industry, all aspects of the economy. And we need, when discussing sustainability, to look at both sides. We need to look at how digital can be an amazing enabler through digital twins, through remote work as well, into a more sustainable society, a more sustainable economy. And we need to look at how we are producing digital and limit the environmental impact of what we are producing. And I think Florence mentioned a couple of studies from the SHIP project in France. We've had a huge number of studies because this has been a very hot topic in the past 2 years. Probably a little more of a concern about the risk for environmental impact of digital than in other countries in Europe when we discuss with our peers. But this is showing how much of this impact is coming from devices, how much of this impact is coming from the huge growth of use cases. And we need to be very mindful of this as a sector in order to get our acts together. And I think Cecilia was mentioning earlier how much in Brussels there was everything about risk of digital. And of course, the first risks we mentioned are being handled right now in TSA and all the regulation and so on. But there's now a challenge for the digital sector and everyone in digital, so everyone in the audience, certainly, to act jointly and provide proof and engage with civil society, with public authorities to make sure that the positive contribution of digital is recognized and that we can drive this not by giving lessons out that we are better than others, but actually listening to others and engaging in this. I think this is a big challenge for the sector.
Did you want to just add? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I totally agree with Mathieu. And what makes it a bit difficult is that depending on the industry, we are supporting the transformation of the industry very differently. If you look at manufacturing industry, car industry, how is digital helping car industry? Well, thanks to digital, thanks to virtual twin of a car, you can do an electric car, you can model an electric car, and you can even model how the car is going to run. And we are supporting car industry with that. At the same time, plane industry, flight industry, there's a system we're supporting Airbus to develop a hydrogen plane. And this is really the way we're supporting manufacturing industry, helping them to develop new, more sustainable products. And at the same time, because we manage to digitalize the plants, to optimize everything in the plant to make them more sustainable. But what we are doing in manufacturing, we are doing it totally different in infrastructure. In infrastructure, the project I'm having with energy company or with construction company is really about virtualizing a territory or a building in order to optimize it as a system of systems. And it has nothing to do with new type of projects we're developing, but really optimizing system of projects. So that makes the role of digital very different from one industry to the others. But each time we have proof points. And as Mathieu is saying, I think what's important is showcase the proof point, communicate on them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there is so much more to be done there, because I think, as you yourself know, if you want to bring everybody along for the ride, and not least, as we heard in the beginning, in an inclusive way, I think there was this, Cecilia made the comment, it's not just about users, everybody should be able to be a creator. So it's absolutely critical those stories are out there. Now, obviously, a valuable story, and I'm just going to pick up again and the presidency, because I know it'd be interesting to hear about your roadmap, this particular making sure the green and the digital transitions do mutually support each other. Are we really, truly, fulfilling that potential that digital has for green? So can you just in a nutshell tell us a little bit more about what's going on in France?
So in France, we've had a very busy 2021 year on that front, with actually a couple of legislative acts, plenty of work being done by public authorities, a very active civil society on those topics, and the status we're having is about a year ago we published a roadmap, a national roadmap for bringing together both transitions, digital and green transition, and we've started to deliver on this. What are the key aspects? The first one is to get our KPIs, measurements right. I mean, we can't improve what we can't measure and everything, but it's a complex one, but it's also the most disputed one at this point. Mm. There are many reports claiming very striking KPIs out in the media, some of them probably not relevant to the situation of the sector. And so we're putting a lot of efforts in having proper methodologies and providing information that is consistent with the way we can assess the impact of usage versus the impact of acquisition of devices and so on. And all of this is very political, because it's a way of making users, companies from Europe, outside of Europe, accountable about how they're affecting the environment. So that's our first step. We are also engaging with a significant number of actors to see how they can roll out best practices. We've had discussions with our telecom sector about how we can foster greater use of refurbished devices, for instance, which is a very powerful tool to reduce the impact of our sector on the environment. We've been discussing with verticals and industries, challenging them to put digital at the center of their transformation plans to be more sustainable. And we've also been discussing with a number of players that are basically not French, not even European, to see how they can contribute to that. And one aspect will certainly be put forward at the European level, and I'm coming back to the presidency intent, is to try and launch this debate at European level. This is probably going to be an item of discussion in the informal ministerial council of the telecoms ministers that takes place in March in France, and we'll try and see how we can organize together to advance these topics that are only emerging. There's no big sustainable digital file on the table of the presidency at this stage, and this is certainly something we want you to discuss with everyone.
That's interesting. Okay, so you're saying it's only emerging, and yeah,
at the European scale, it's only emerging. We're discussing the AI Act or the Data Act, Chips Act, but there's no sustainable digital act, and I'm not asking for one because I don't think an act is the right one.
Don't say that's what.
But at least we are not having this discussion at political level as it should be.
Okay, so you're saying, so you might disagree with Hillary, who said the first KPIs are always the easiest. It's the last mile KPIs that are harder. You're actually saying, listen, Kat, from the outset, KPIs, it's very, very tricky, but you've got to get that right. Okay, I'm going to just pass on. Let's just drill down back into some of the issues that you raised in answer to the first question I posed, and also that we heard in our introductions, and particularly about supply chain you know, the importance of having a responsibility, being mindful of your own environmental footprint, having that influence on others, but also supply chain visibility and all the complexity that came up in COVID. I mean, I think we would agree, unless you're about to tell me no, that digital technologies we know can really help those, you know, CO2 reduction efforts, and getting that supply chain visibility through the digital transformation is, you know, very, very key. But in order to really, again, harness the potential, are there particular measures that you think in your experience should be put into place to be able to really exploit that?
First of all, I agree. We are very strong in industry, we formed Industry 4.0, and Europe is very strong in green technologies. And it would be stupid for Europe just to copy hyperscalers and try to do the same. So how can we build really on what we have, plus our kind of, you know, instinct driving forward sustainability? So we need to combine those. We need to combine digital and sustainability, and that's gonna differentiate us in the future. If I look in again in my own factory, what we found out is, because we said, okay, we produce a product and it should be net zero now, not in 10 years, it should be now. And we looked at the product, but we figured out that only 10 to 15% of the energy consumption is in our factory. Other 85% is on scope 3, means in the supply chain. And we didn't have any transparency. What is the energy consumption of a PCB, of the housing, of the plastic, of the component? We didn't know. So basically we said, okay, first of all, let's really get the energy consumption of real values. So it's IoT, taking the real values out of the machine and looking at that and try to optimize. And then you optimize this 15% maybe down to 10% or 7.5%. So you reduce by 50%. But you need to look in the supply chain. And what we now, and this is on our topic, we started out of our factory, we said, okay, let's ask our suppliers, what is their CO2 footprint? And we now developed a system which is called Secret, going to be launched very, very soon, where basically it's an open network, leveraging also blockchain, because you need trustworthy data, because else you fake, this is a very low CO2 footprint, which can be supported all over all suppliers. So we can ask our supplier, what is your CO2 footprint of the product you're delivering? So we get this CO2 footprint, we assemble it with other products, and then we have a new CO2 footprint of our product, all putting together elements of a blockchain. And that's a topic where I say we need free data flow on that use case. But we need free data flow then not only in Europe. I think we need to be front runner, because most of the components come out of China, out of Asia. So if they don't deliver us the right values, so what can we do? And I think if we get the transparency first on the complete supply chain, then we can put KPIs on there. Then we have methodologies, leveraging also new technologies like AI and others to optimize then the CO2 footprint. But first of all, we need the transparency and the data flow across the world. And I think we can be front runners as European to put standards there on the market.
Thank you very much. Now, just keeping my eye on the clock, we've got about 9-10 minutes, and I've got a few more questions. So I'm going to stick with these good people, because I think that they are providing you with plenty of splendid food for thought. So I'm going to stay with this. What I do want to just, obviously, this whole relationship between, you know, industry, national level, EU, this is what it's all about. We know this. Every single sector I moderate, it's, you know, everybody has a role to play. We're all in this together. Don't wait. So you're a leader. You are from a leading European technology company. If you had to pinpoint for us what you think is, you know, the EU's 3 main strengths as a place to do business. Now, we heard some there from the President of the Commission, and also critically, I said at the start, we'd look at ways that we need to roll out, and we need to embrace the pioneers, and we need to make sure that they're rolling out across Europe. Do you think there's anything that needs one particular thing, if you could wave a magic wand, to change in Europe so that more of those success stories can emerge? What's it doing well, and what do you want to see change?
Yes, definitely. I think Europe is doing very well. We are very innovative. We have a big market. Dassault Systèmes is born in Europe. 90% of the cars, 70% of the planes, half of the world trucks are designed with our software. But we face the same challenge in Europe that everywhere around the planet. and we have an opportunity to move forward, and it's on education. Right now, I think we can say here that every business, every industry has become digital. If they want to keep being innovative, if they want to keep innovating, if they want to become sustainable, digital is a must. But we are lacking capacities of people. We are lacking education. We don't have enough ICT specialists. We don't have enough software engineers. We don't have enough data scientists. It's a case in Europe, it's a case in Asia, it's a case in the US. But if we want to stay innovative, if we want to stay at the forefront, we need these people, and as soon as possible. So we need to create new partnerships between digital companies and schools and universities in Europe to foster for that education, because without these people, we won't be able to do the digital transformation of all the industries.
And typically one hears that the educational sector is one of the ones a little bit like the Titanic to change in terms of speed. But speed is of the essence. So so what would you say? I mean, and maybe even Mathieu could very briefly come in on this, that to get that going, to really put a bit of a fire up there.
Yeah. Well, to do that, what we are doing at Dassault Systèmes is that we are partnering with schools and universities to develop our own curriculum, our own learning experiences. So even if university cannot not adapt the full curriculum, we're creating digital curricula available on the Systèmes website, but also available in a lot of schools in order to foster that change, create the people who are going to have the digital skills that we need in Europe.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that, because I fully agree, and I think this is a good signal to say not just what the educational system can do for the companies in providing the talents, but also what you can do to actually create this talent. And there's two things I want to underline. One is, I think the industry must come together to address this talent challenge, which is absolutely critical. So it's probably not just about the initiative from Dassault Systèmes or Siemens or any others, but also people coming together and actually addressing this as a sector. And there's a lot to be achieved there. We have a few initiatives that are emerging also in France with that we're supporting. And the second thing is, it's about creating the young talent, but also about reskilling. There are a lot of jobs that will not require only to be the top-notch data scientist. We need to address this talent discussion as well. And we need to be very mindful of the opportunity this is to actually transform the companies from the digital sector, but also from all parts of the economy.
Absolutely. And not least, I love that you've used that word mindful twice. Both the footprint it's a lovely word to use. I think it's a very important one. Absolutely. And not least, I mean, as everybody is aware, we do have a demographic challenge. People are living longer. So this job transition, when we all focus on youth and skills and those who are, and even then we don't have enough digital skills, as we've heard, there is. And so when we talk lifelong learning, it's not a sort of it's absolutely critical as well. Anything before I come to a last question that you want to add on that?
Yeah, maybe to add on that. I mean, absolutely, the reskilling, of our aging society is very important. But also, we should not say, a great technology, state of the art, but there are few people can do it. If you want to scale, you need to make complex technology easy.
Yes.
Easy to use. And, I'm also an engineer, so I like to have the complex things, but make it easy. Then you can scale it. And I think that's a very important aspect.
Thank you. And let me stick with you and ask you, just in the closing minutes, and I will say the same question to you. What does success, so we've got the digital decade, what does success look like for you? And critically, what are you going to do as industry to help achieve that success?
Yeah, I mean, coming exactly to the topic of scaling, I think there's a lot of small mid-sized companies which are not yet into that digital technology. I think it's successful if we can enable those small and mid-sized companies to go on the next S-curve to stay innovative in the global market. I think that's very important, number one. And number two, we need to think much more about how we get into a cyclic economy. Producing and forgetting it's the wrong thing. How can we really have over the life cycle of a product being connected, and then go into repair, or in the last thing, into recycling. And if you have a much higher degree of repair and recycling as in KPI, I think that would be very interesting.
And so how are you as a bigger actor, how do you think you can contribute to what with the smaller actors? And we know this, we hear it time and time again. And when I am moderating various events for SMEs in terms of accessibility, seat at the table, capacity, resources, fears sometimes, which, okay, they're diminishing. But so just in one sentence, how could you contribute then, do you think?
Make complex topics easy. And we also applied for the IPSI project, for example, where we say small companies need to get hold on that technology.
Thank you. For you, what does success look like at the end of the digital decade? And what are you alone going to do in the next 6 months, Mathieu, to make that happen?
Yeah, the presidency is a collective job, so I'm not going to do anything by myself. I want to reassure everyone. So I think the key for success is resiliency, is having our top-notch research, our production facilities, our talents available. That's what success looks like. It's a complex outcome because it's a system, and we're all part of it. And as governments at European level, which is the right scale once again, probably what we need to ensure is to have the investment, the support from states and Europe well aligned to the sustainability business model, to ensure we're not creating the wrong incentives, and also certainly provide stable, future-proof regulations that create a framework that, create the right incentive to go from business models that are not aligned to sustainability goals in some cases to a more sustainable way.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Creating sustainable future. It's at the speed at which all of this is happening. For you, just what does success look like, and how can you contribute to achieving that success?
So let me give you a KPI. Today, if you look at the ranking of the 20 most innovative companies by Forbes, there is only one. That's a Systèmes. So for me, success would like half of this ranking are European companies. And what are we doing? Well, we're developing a lot of innovative software for the SMEs and for the big European companies in order for them to stay on top, become more innovative. And we're partnering with a lot of schools, university, R&D labs, because we want to see that happening. Half of the most well-known innovative companies to be European.
Thank you. And a last we talk KPIs. Industrial KPI, what would you say your number one industrial KPI for Europe?
I would say on the sustainability aspect, really reducing the CO2 footprint to a certain amount. And I think we need to be more aggressive than we are today.
Okay, Mathieu, in a nutshell, what's yours?
I love KPIs. They're great to track progress, but I don't think we can sum up sustainability with one KPI. It's a system, and we need to create the right chain of approaches to deliver a more sustainable society in digital.
Any last word from you before I close?
Well, I think with digital, we have a unique way to make Europe more advanced and more sustainable. We have incredible examples, example from Siemens, example from Dassault Systèmes, other digital companies. Virtual twins are very powerful way to make our industry more sustainable. So let's do it.
I thank you so very much. Don't go away because we do have a video, but absolutely really fascinating. Thank you for articulating on digital twins and their value. Thank you also for giving us an insight into what's happening on the ground at the speed at which you've had to change, which is also a huge challenge, but as we say, always the cliche, a huge opportunity for explaining that it really is tricky to set some of those KPIs, but you've got to get all of the right stakeholders around the table. We clearly hear about this issue of education, this digital literacy, this understanding that with that transformation, the skills, the new skills and the upskills have to go with it. And yeah, just being sure to keep an eye. The industry is very particular. There's some fabulous stuff happening in Europe, but in terms of the regulatory framework, we really need to keep a very close eye on industry to give that support to be able to have the influence along the supply chain in terms of reducing emissions, and also to look what's happening in its own backyard. So what do we say? To walk the talk. So we're mindful of that, Mathieu. Thank you very much to all of you. Could we just give them warm thanks? Don't leave, because we're shortly going to go into a coffee break. But first of all, I said that this was Numium, the partner National Association of Digital Europe, is of course co-orchestrator of this panel, and I think we've got a short clip from them. So if we could please play.
Smoking big cigars. I hope you're ready for what's coming now. I'm the one on the let it go, bring it down.
I think we can all agree that that has way better music than the standard fare that comes out of the library. Do we not agree? Yeah, I could have actually danced there. That was one other thing I wanted to say as a key message, sorry, before I take us into the coffee break. What you said, it's only really just emerging, this digital and green. And that, I think, was the biggest, perhaps it shouldn't have been, surprise to me. So I think that is really what I very much take away from this. So you're not advocating a digital green act, but hey, a sustainable, but you know, maybe, who knows, in the end of 6 months. So thank you very much. First of all, just to say, if we have a moment, we've got an illustrator working behind the scenes. His name is Alejandro. He cannot hear us, but look at that work. You can hopefully see it in a minute. We've got time. We can see it. Now we can't, but if we can't, there we go. So you can see on that screen, trying to capture, if I squint with my very old person eyes, there, make technology easy to access, education, sorry, I was going to say evaluation. Education is a huge challenge, creating jobs for all, scaling up, absolutely critical. Yep, we need to promote the circular approach. I need to have him on so he can do the summary of these discussions better than I can. Absolutely, the circular approach, flexibility of the supply chain. So he's going to be working throughout to capture some of those key messages. Now, we are going to a 15-minute coffee break till 15:15, let's say 13-minute, and we're going to be back with a session on how innovation can underpin Europe's recovery. Now, if you're online, please do, and even here, head to the exhibition booths for online live sessions and, of course, virtual networking. For those of you, the 1,600 of you online, and don't forget to tweet. And we'll see you back here at 11:15. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.